In chapter 12, we focus on how to calculate compound interest and present value. So let's talk about different terms and understand the different terms. First, the term compounding. What does that mean? Well, think about if you make an investment or if you borrow money. Compound involves the calculation of interest periodically over the life of the loan or the investment. So we're going to determine how much interest you're either going to earn or how much interest you're going to have to pay. When you have what's called compound interest, it is the interest on the principal plus the interest from the prior periods. What does that mean? When you have compound interest from an investment standpoint, that means that you're going to earn interest off of the interest from the prior periods, and we'll see what that means in more detail in a few minutes. Future value refers to the compound amount. So if you make an investment today that you leave an account, say, for 4 or 5 years, we're saying how much will you have in the account at the end of that 4 or 5 year period. That is known as the future value, or what's called the compound amount. Then the present value is the value of a loan or investment today. So if you were to invest $100 today, that's known as the present value. The amount you have in the account, say at the end of 4 or 5 years, is known as the future value. Okay? So let's talk about different terms and understand the terminology. When we say we're going to compound interest annually, that means we're going to earn interest once, or we're going to calculate interest once a year. If it's compounded semi-annually, we're going to calculate interest every 6 months or twice a year. Compounding quarterly, we're going to calculate interest every 3 months or 4 times a year. If you're compounding monthly, calculate interest every month or 12 times a year. If it's compounding daily, we're going to calculate interest every day or 365 times for a full year. So if you have an account that is earning interest, you need to know how often is the interest being compounded, because the frequency of the compound period does have an impact on the amount you're going to receive in interest. Let's get right into some calculations. What if you were to invest $1 today? $1 is known as the present value amount. You put this money into an account where you're going to earn 8% interest. That 8% is the annual interest rate. You're going to leave it there for 4 years, or what we're saying is going to be 4 periods. We're saying how much would you have an account at the end of that 4 years. That value is known as the future value. So what we're showing is the value in the account at the end of each year. So at the end of 1 year, you have $1.08. End of year 2, $1.16, or really $1.17, round to the nearest cent. End of year 3, $1.26. At the end of the 4th year, you have the account $1.36. We're going to show how to do these type of calculations first using a calculator, and then using what's known as a future value table. Okay? So this is how we got those numbers, just doing simple manual calculations. You would take the annual interest rate times the amount invested to get the amount of interest earned each year. You would add the interest to the beginning balance to get your ending balance. So at the end of year one, you will have an account $1.08. Now remember with the compounded interest, you're going to earn interest on the interest earned from the previous year. So in year two, you're not only getting interest on the dollar you invested, but now interest on the $1.08 because you're going to receive interest based off of the interest earned from the previous year. So now we're going to take $1.08 times 8 cents. We're going to earn 9 cent interest in the second year. You add that to your beginning balance to get the end of the year balance. Do the same thing for year three. Now, you see it's saying it's 9 cents again. Well, it's a small investment. So it's really like 0.0936, something like that. We round to the nearest cent, got the 9 cent. So at the end of year three, now you have an account $1.26. So now you take that amount times 0.8. Now you're going to earn 10% interest. At the end of year four, you have an account roughly $1.36. Now this is doing manual calculations. So if I had an investment for 20 years, do I want to go through this every year? Yeah, I don't think so. In lieu of this, we can use what's called tables that would do the same type of calculations for us. And we'll look at those tables in a few minutes. To use those tables, first, we have to know the number of periods and the interest rate. So if you compound $100 for 4 years at 8% annually, semi-annually, or quarterly, we're saying what is N instead of the number of periods. What is R? R stands for the interest rate per period. Okay? To get your N, we're going to divide the number of years multiplied by the number of times the interest is going to be compounded per year. So we're talking about 4 years. So if you compound annually being once a year, you're going to have 4 interest payment periods, and the annual rate is going to be 8% per period. If you compound interest semi-annually, that means twice a year for 4 years, there's going to be 8 interest payment periods. But the interest rate is going to be 4% per period because the 8% is the rate on an annual basis because we're doing semi-annual interest calculation. The interest rate is going to be 4% every 6 months. Now, if quarterly, there's 4 interest compounding periods per year times 4 years, so a total of 16 interest payment periods. However, the interest rate is going to be 2% per period because, again, the 8% is the annual interest rate, the rate for an entire year, because we're going to calculate interest quarterly or every 3 months. The interest rate is going to be 2% per quarter. So for each of these, interest rate, of course, annually, 8% times 1 is 8%. Semi-annually, twice a year times 4% will give you 8%. And because it's quarterly, which means 4 times a year times 2% would give you a total interest rate of 8%. So once you have your N, number of periods, and your R, the rate for each period, we can now use what we call tables to determine the present value of an amount. So you ready? Let's go. We're going to first compare simple interest against compound interest. So with simple interest, you only earn interest on the principal amount. Again, with simple interest, you will only earn interest on the principal amount. So if you invest $8 and leave it in account for 4 years at a rate of 8% earned annually, we're saying what's the amount of simple interest and the maturity value at the end of 4 years. Well, with simple interest, interest is principal times rate times time. So it'll be $80 times the rate of 8% times 4 years. You will earn interest amount of $25.60. If you add the interest earned to the amount invested, the maturity value will be $105.60. Compare that to compounded interest. With compound interest, it means you're going to earn interest on the interest from the previous accounting period or the previous years. So once again, we would take the 80,000 times 8% to get interest for the first year, add it to our beginning balance to get the ending balance. Now you're taking the ending balance times 8% this year to get the interest earned. So by the end of year 4, you will have in the account $108.83. So the total interest will be $28.83. I know it's not a huge difference, but you only invested $80. But you see that when you have compound interest, you're going to earn more interest than with simple interest. And that's because with compound interest, you earn interest on the principal amount as well as the interest earned from the previous accounting period. Okay? We're going to come back with a second video or part 2 to show how to use the tables instead of manual calculations to determine the maturity value or the future value of an investment.